right. Well, everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Martin McGovern. Oh, we got our next person joining. There we are. My name is Martin McGovern, and I'm really excited to chat with you about how to perfect your post-grad pitch. So we'll pull up the presentation here and we'll start getting into it. As we kick off the discussion today, I'd love to get a sense from all of you. Where are you feeling most nervous about the job search at this point in time?
Whiteboards.
Whiteboarding, fair enough. That's a scary one. What else?
I'm also just worried about the interview process in general.
Yeah, behavioral, technical, all of the above.
All of the above.
Yeah. Well, the big thing that we're going to touch on today is we're going to go over a couple of areas with the interview. One is the tell me about yourself question, which is that whole elevator pitch piece, right? And the other is how to, describe yourself in a way that integrates your background. I find a lot of times when working with folks in transition, we tend to want to ignore the past or run away from the past a little bit, maybe downplay it. When in reality, we should be bringing those things together into a cohesive story, because that's really what these companies want to hear as we're out there in the job search. So we'll jump into the pitch here, the post-grad pitch, and jump in with any questions along the way. All right, so who am I? My name is Martin McGovern. I am the founder and lead coach at Career Therapy. As it says here, my favorite thing is really to dig into both the emotional and the promotional sides of the search. I think you can know all the tactics in the world, but if you're too anxious or nervous or overwhelmed to apply them, it doesn't really help a whole lot, right? So trying to help get us, through those mental blocks and into a place where we're really making progress. My background is actually in marketing and advertising. So I bring a lot of that into what we're going to be talking about today. How to think about the customer, how to speak in ways that are compelling and get people to act, all that good stuff. I spent many years in the marketing world teaching working Fortune 500 companies to use language to get your money. And so now I'm trying to reverse that and help you get money back from them. So it'll be a fun little exploration here. I've worked with all sorts of different schools and boot camps around the country. And let's just jump right into it. The first thing is congratulations. You're going to be graduating and going into the job search and really getting things done. But this is kind of what it looks like, when you sit down and start doing the job search. It's you and that screen and that endless job board that just seems to go on forever. Has anyone started applying to things through job boards yet? No? Okay, so we're definitely early on here. So as you get to that point and you start sending things out, a couple of warnings. Number one, job boards are not as effective as you think they are, or at least as they're being sold to you. They usually get like a 1 to 5% response rate, and that's just responses. That's not yeses. So be aware of that and realize that it's a combination of efforts. It's the online job board, the in-person networking, the referrals that you can get, the alumni networks that you can tap into. It's a combination of all these different things that gets you the job. And what we're going to do is just help you talk about yourself in the most confident way possible, so that when you're talking to these different people, you're showing up in the way that is effective. And here's just three things, the way that we're breaking out the discussion today. We're putting it into three different areas. The first one is putting them first. The second one is sharing your unique stories. And the third one is perfecting your post-grad pitch. The reason I say put them first is because everything on the internet is all about your personal brand and your personal passions and how you deserve mentorship and how so on and so forth, right? The spotlight is just so much on you during this job search process, right? And I'm trying to just shift that spotlight over a little bit, because while it's good to understand our passions and we should do that self-exploration, I tend to find it overwhelms people and it makes you get really just sort of hyper focused on yourself. Like if you look at a cover letter, almost everything in the cover letter is I, me, look at me. And then the company goes, well, why should I care? And so we need to put the company's needs first and then because we've done that, they will happily give us the paycheck that we want, the job that we want, the title that we want, and so on, because we've sold it to them in the way they want to hear it. Your unique stories, that's integrating your past and perfecting your pitch. We're actually going to give you some templates to work with here. So you'll leave this talk today with an elevator pitch that you've written out. So stay tuned for that. All right, what do I mean by putting them first? Well, the first thing here is it's not about you. We really do need to think in terms of the quote unquote buyer who is purchasing our services. We need to make it all about their wants and needs. And our goal with the interview isn't to get everything right or be perfect. It's to build trust and rapport. So a lot of times people will go into the interview trying to know every answer or not mess anything up, when in reality, what we should get better at is responding when things go wrong and focusing on tone and rapport over knowing every technology or having every bit of information right. There's so many times that I've been coaching people where they don't know the answer, but they crush the interview because of the way they talk about not knowing it. And we'll get into that in just a second. So what do you think you should not be saying as you go out into the job market and start talking to people and companies? How do you think people typically will describe themselves when asked, tell me about yourself after graduating a boot camp?
Possibly talk about the program you came from too much?
Absolutely. The typical thing that we see is folks will say, hey, I recently graduated from this program, and they'll focus on the things that they want out of a career, right? Mentorship. I want to learn. I want to develop my career, right? I had someone earlier today, I did a mock interview with them, and they said, I can't wait to join this team so you can teach me how to do UX. And I was like, ooh, yeah, that's what the company wants to hear, right? I want this job so you can teach me, so I can be an expense to the company, right? Because here's what the company is hearing, right? Hi, I'm inexperienced, unemployed, need you to teach me, and I'll cost this company a lot of money. Anyone want to come off this way in the interview? Yeah, likely not, right? So what should we be saying instead? What do you think?
Here's what I can do for you.
Here's what I can do for you. Exactly. And how do we know what we can do for them? How do we figure out what it is that they need? Does anyone have an idea of the business problem that your skill set solves? What do you think it is? Well, this is why we're talking today, right? We need to know what business problem our skill set solves, because every company, in order to get headcount, had to put together a budget proposal for their C-level suite. They had to say, we need to put aside this much money to hire this person to do these tasks, because it will bring in an ROI to the company of this much, or a savings to the company of this much, right? It all comes down to the bottom line at a company. So we need to understand how our job affects the bottom line. Like, I know as a coach, the things that I do is I help people get jobs, which increases job placement numbers, which helps them in marketing their programs, right? So if you graduate a boot camp and you get a job, the placement numbers go up, and in the marketing they go, hey, we have 95% placement rates or whatever, right? I also am customer service, right? If the last touch point with the company is bad, that person's going to go leave a terrible review on Course Report. So I'm partial customer service, partial marketing. I understand where I fit, but my job is to make people feel good through this process, even though it's a really tough process, right? So for you, what is it that you do, and what value does it bring to the company? Do you improve the UX and increase the number of sales because there's fewer clicks to purchase, right? Do you create new apps because you're a back-end person, and that new app creates a new way to engage with the brand, which creates new revenue streams, right? What are the bottom line things that you bring to the company? You have to put yourselves into their shoes. What does the company care about most, and why are they hiring for this position? That's what you need to ask yourself. So let's take a moment here. Put in the chat, what are some of the job titles that you want to apply to? What do you think? What's been on your mind? All right, we got software engineer, data analyst, project manager. All right, so just think, we'll think broad strokes here. What does a software engineer help companies build? Anyone chime in?
Websites.
Websites, software, right? And it could be internal software, it could be external software, right? So there's all sorts of different things. So if you're going to analyze data, the question is, what are companies doing with that data? If you're building apps, what are these companies doing with these apps? If you're managing projects, you're probably trying to make things more efficient, save time, and therefore save money, or launch new projects and therefore make more money, right? So you always want to be putting yourself back into the shoes of the person who's hiring. Why do they need this person on their team? And what is the cost benefit of that role, right? And this can be a bit overwhelming, but you can literally just Google, why should I hire a software engineer? Or why should I hire a project manager? And you can read literally the exact same thing that these hiring managers are doing to justify the hire, right? They're going to Google and they're typing in, why should my company hire a software engineer? And they look at a bunch of websites that say software engineers do this, 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 and this. Oh, I need that, or I need UX, or I need data analysis, or whatever. And then they go put their proposal together based on that. So if you come in with that exact same language, you're going to hit the ears just right, and they're going to want to hire you, right? So use the resources that are out there and shift the perspective from you to them, all right? And that's this right here, right? The internet says it's all about you, but making it all about you is going to drive you crazy, because that means that every time you get rejected, it's 100% on you. They didn't like you. Has anyone got that fear, that feeling, right? The truth is, it's not about us at all, right? It's about this role and our skills. If our skills aren't right for this role, that's fine. We need to go find the role that our skills are right for. But it's not even about us. It's about, can we solve the problems that this team has, right? So we go into the room and they say, tell me about yourself. And you say, oh, I'm super passionate about solving problems, which I hear every day. Like, that's what everyone's go-to thing is. And I go, what kinds of problems? Like walking people's dogs, that's a problem, right? Clearly not, right? You're all in tech. So you have different problems that you like to solve. So I like solving these kinds of business problems, right? I personally, as a coach, like solving people's emotional and promotional problems. That's why I put it right in my pitch, right? For you, it's going to be something else, right? You want it to be more about them. I like solving user experience problems, because I know if someone hates your website, they're not going to buy your product. Pretty straightforward, right? I like solving data analysis problems, because I know if you're not looking at the data, you're probably making uninformed decisions that aren't going to align to the business needs, right? I enjoy solving project management problems, because I know that teams could run more efficiently if they just implemented these strategies or tools or waterfall things or whatever it might be, right? So you position it in a way of, it's about me, but it's about me in relation to you and your issues and your needs, right? I could tell you that I love having coffee with people and talking about taboo things like money, but that doesn't help you if what you need is a resume, right? So I need to talk in the terms that you hear, right? Now, who do you think we're going to be talking to? Who do you think we're going to come across in the job search process? What kinds of professionals?
Probably recruiters.
Recruiters for sure. Who else?
HR people.
Recruiters, HR. Absolutely. Recruiters, HR, CEOs, your network, right? We're going to come across a lot of different types of professionals. And it's going to be interesting to see how you slightly adjust your messaging depending on who you're talking to, right? Talking to a CEO, you might want to talk a little bit bigger picture, right? What's going on in the industry? What's going on with competitors? What's going on with technology? And how is that affecting this field that we're working in? Whereas a hiring manager might be a little bit more like, what's going on in this team? What are the KPIs you're trying to hit? What does the makeup of the team look like? And how do I fit within it, right? A little bit more specific questions, right? Recruiters. Who here is excited to work with recruiters? I'm seeing laughter, so not excited to work with recruiters. I hear you. So I know a lot of recruiters. Recruiters are great people. There's some really good ones out there, but I think generally speaking, when someone's going through a career transition, trying to find entry-level roles, trying to make a pivot, I find recruiters don't help very much. And I've actually talked with quite a few, and they've admitted, oh yeah, we don't really work with, entry-level people. And the question is, why is that? And this plays again into putting yourselves in their shoes, right? Put yourself in the shoes of a recruiter. What are their incentives? What do you think?
Find the best person for the job.
Find the best person for the job. But what does that mean, right? Who's paying them?
They're a recruiting company, so they get most of their revenue from direct hires. So
Yeah, so they usually get a commission based on the salary of the person that they place, right? That's the typical setup. So what kinds of people do they want to be placing into companies? Entry-level people who are making the least amount of money, or mid-career, higher-end career people who are making huge salaries with bigger commissions, right? Do they want to place someone who has a difficult story to tell? Like, oh, I didn't go to college, or I'm doing a boot camp, or, I'm trying to break into a new career? Or do they want to work with someone who's got some big names on their resume, right? To make it easier to tell that story and to sell that person, right? So recruiters are working in mass, right? They reach out to hundreds of people, then they get the couple with the best stories, then they sell those into the best roles, right? Again, I'm not hating on recruiters. I'm just trying to have your back when it comes to putting too much trust into recruiters too early. All right. What I tend to see is job seekers will, get on the phone with a really enthusiastic recruiter. The recruiter will overpromise that they can get them a job, and then the job seeker will stop doing the job search, thinking that this person's going to do it for me. And suddenly we've got ourselves a dangerous situation of, wait, they ghosted me and now a month has gone by, right? I don't ever want you to be in that position. So always be thinking, what is the incentive of the person that I'm talking to, and how do I play to their incentive, right? If a recruiter is someone you're talking to, by all means, talk to them, but talk to them in terms that they want to hear. They won't care about your passions. They won't care about that stuff. They'll care about, how do I make this story sound good to an employer so that it's an easy sell? So you need to help them tell that story better. Oh, I am really good at solving, web flow issues. I'm really good at creating interactive experiences. I'm really good at the design, or I'm really good at the research, or I'm great at interviewing people and doing that kind of work, maybe surveys, right? If you can help them with specifics, they can better place you on a team. So those are the things that we always want to be thinking about, putting yourselves into their shoes. And the key thing here, you wouldn't necessarily, that's really what we're trying to get here, right? They have problems and they have a budget. So we need to know the ROI of our role. We don't necessarily need to know the financial ROI, like exactly what the number is, but we need to know the bottom line impact that our role is going to have, right? And here's how you find out what they really need. You literally can just Google it. I'm a business analyst, so let's Google, why should I hire a business analyst? And see what the internet tells us, right? There's 82 million results here. I think you can find an answer somewhere online. So a business analyst is valuable because they help companies make viable changes and reduce costs. So they are a cost saver. All right. Now you can keep going down this rabbit hole and you can find a whole lot of really good stuff. And the best thing you can do is look up consulting agencies that sell these services and borrow their language, aka just take the things that relate to your experience, right? So if they say you should hire us because we help your company do X, you go, oh, cool. So if I were hired for that role, I'd probably help companies do X, right? And you can start integrating that sales language into your pitch. And it's not inauthentic because this is literally what the companies are Googling and trying to figure out on their own. Any questions on this? Has anyone done this? All right, I'm seeing a lot of head shakes no. How about this? Let's take a minute here. Go to Google and type in your role that you put in the chat and type in, why should I hire this role? Or type in, look up consultancies that sell that role and see if you can find one sales message or one rationale for the bottom line impact of hiring that person and put it in the chat. I'd love to see what you come up with. Anyone finding anything interesting? All right. Michael
looked
said, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I looked up for project management. I found save time and focus, save money, manage risk, prevent scope creep, and realize broader ambitions and business goals.
So imagine you were in an interview and they said, what's your understanding of project management and why do you want to be a project manager? And you said, well, I understand that companies are always dealing with scope creep. And you just start talking in the terms that you just read here, right? You're going to have a much stronger impact than, well, I like people and I like collaboration and, I'm excited to work on a team, right? It's much more focused and much more in the terminology and the language they want to hear. I appreciate you sharing that. All right, we've got software developer teams will help you make your vision a reality. All right, I like it. So it's very high level, but we can take that as a starting point to go deeper. A sales engineer is someone who sells complex scientific and technological products or services to a business. They must have extensive knowledge in the product's parts and functions and must understand the scientific process that makes these products work. So imagine you were in the interview and you started talking about the scientific processes that make things work, right? You're going to start speaking their language, right? And then we have software engineers. An added software developer team can improve workflow specialization. All right. So now you're getting the lingo. You're literally pulling the lingo. Now, be a little bit critical of what you pull. You don't want to go too heavy on the marketing side of things. Like some stuff is just so in the clouds, right? So try and keep it to the practical as much as you can here. But it's always good to be able to say, well, the reason I'm so excited to be a software engineer is because I really enjoy working on improving workflow specializations, on doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm curious to learn what kinds of problems your company is dealing with that I could help with as a software engineer, right? Because you're not going to know what this company's problem is. You're going to just know the general set of problems, right? Like I know everyone I coach has imposter syndrome, and I know everyone I coach probably needs their resume looked at, and I know everyone I coach probably needs a mock interview. But what I need to figure out is which things do you need, right? And I can only get that by asking questions, right? So you're going to start with the general understanding, and then you're going to go deeper, all right? And you really want to start selling to them the way that they sell to you, right? Has anyone seen this ad or ads like this from Nike? I'm sure you have. Right? They're saying it's only crazy to dream until you do it. What are they not saying in this ad that is also true? What's their real motivation with this ad? Feel free to be cynical.
To sell you shoes.
To sell you shoes. Yeah. Now, are they going to say, please buy our shoes because our stockholders want more money? Because our shareholders will be happier if we can pull in more cash and more dough? Are they going to say that?
They're selling the dream.
They're selling the dream, right? This is actually something I struggle with. I'm always way too practical. I come from the marketing world, so I generally have a little bit of a distaste for marketing sometimes, but I'm always just like, what you get is an hour of coaching. Instead, I should be selling the dream, right? But what we need to learn from these companies, especially when you look at job boards and things like that, which are advertisements, by the way, we need to start talking to them the same way they talk to us. Nike would never come to you and say, our shareholders are upset that we haven't sold as many shoes, so can you please buy some? No, they're going to say, do you like hiking? I love hiking. Do you hate when your shoes slip while you're hiking because it's damp out? Yeah, that's the worst. Well, our new shoe slips less. Dang it, I already committed by telling you that I like these things. Now I got to buy these shoes, right? So when you're talking to companies, so often I'll be coaching someone. I'll say, well, why do you want this job? And they'll say, well, I want to get paid. I want a paycheck, right? I just want to pay my bills. And, I'm not going to argue with that. That's absolutely understandable and true, right? But there are preferences that you have. And the truth is that everyone wants a paycheck. I have yet to meet a person that doesn't want a paycheck. So at a certain point, saying what is true for everyone isn't saying anything at all, right? If you say, I like to solve problems, well, that's literally what a job is. A job is solving problems in every career, right? Dog walking to finance to web development. It's all solving problems, right? My question is, which problems? I like solving user experience problems is much different than I like solving quote unquote problems. So saying things like, I want to make money doesn't really get us very far, because the truth is everyone wants to make money. So you need to stand out a little bit differently. So if you can say, I like solving these kinds of company problems, and again, I'm going to beat this dead horse, but if you can focus on their problems, you're going to stand out, because most job seekers are going to talk about how they want to learn, how they're excited to collaborate, how they can't wait to be part of a team, but they're never going to get to the point where they say, here's the problem I solve and why paying me $70K is worth it, right? Most people don't even understand themselves why they should be making the salary they make, right? But if you can put yourself into the context of the company's bottom line, it all makes sense. And this brings us to job boards. You really don't need everything in that job board. Has anyone looked at a job board recently and just been like, what the heck is going on? Like, how does someone get this job? What's the thing in every job board that probably gets on your nerves the most?
probably like the degrees from like a university, like a bachelor's degree or.
So requiring a degree, yeah, that's a big one. That's very frustrating, especially in a world of so many different types of education. The big thing that stands out that everyone brings up to me is, how do I get an entry-level job when it says you need 3 years experience to get an entry-level job? It's like a catch-22, right? All right, I need experience to get the job that will give me the experience to get the job, right? So why do they do that? Again, always, 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 as you're going through the job search, put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're interacting with. So who wrote this job description? Let's think about it for a second. Who wrote the job description and what was going through their head when they wrote it? Was it the CEO writing the job description? Probably not, right? So they delegated and then they delegated. What do you think? Who wrote it?
Most likely probably someone in HR. Or
Possibly, I mean, there's 100 answers here, but yeah, possibly. It might even be someone who has no idea what this role is, right? Can you write up a job description for a web developer? Okay, well, I'm a project manager. What do I do? How do I do this, right? So what do you think they're going to do? How are they going to put together this job description?
Try and word it in a way that sees if the person knows as much as they do, at least.
They might overstate some things to make themselves like seem smart as they're writing it, because they have to present it to their higher ups, right? They might just go Frankenstein it together from a bunch of job descriptions online, right? They might just straight up copy and paste a job description from another company, right? We see that all the time. And why would they put 3 years experience for an entry-level job instead of 0 years experience? What do you think?
hopefully save the cost of training.
Save the cost of training. Weed people out, as I have on the board here, right? But just imagine going to your boss and giving them a job description that says 0 years experience. What's your boss going to say? Well, why don't we at least try for someone with some experience, right? Why don't we at least try? So they're going to go, okay. And they put 3 years experience on there. It's going to weed out anyone who's not confident, because if they literally put 0 years experience, imagine how many applications they would get of people who don't screen themselves out, right? It would be unbelievable. So you have to put these things here to weed people out. And the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, you only need about 60% of what's listed on that job board in order to apply. And then once you get to the interview and once you start pitching yourself, that's where you get to fill in the gaps, right? I may not know that technology fully. However, I know this technology and that technology, and I could be up and running on this one within 6 weeks. Rather than saying, I don't know, we give them context about when we will know. And that's all they need to be able to trust us and move us to the next round. And that's why it's always good to ask questions and build rapport, right? So if you don't have an answer, right? Let's say you get into the interview, you've done all your research, you understand why companies generally hire a software engineer, but you don't know why this company's hiring a software engineer. So don't assume you know the answer. What you should do is, in the conversation, in the interview, start asking questions, building rapport. A great way to do this is to just be like, I'm really excited to learn more about this role and see what kinds of problems you're trying to solve with a software engineer hire at your company. What kinds of things are you currently working on? And now you've got a conversation going with the person, right? So always ask questions. And the truth of the matter when it comes to the job search is, it's better to be excited and curious than to be a know-it-all and pretend you have every answer. All right. So there's this weird fine line between being too like self-deprecating, and that can lose you the job because you're not owning your skills enough. And then you tilt to the other side of being arrogant. We don't want to be either of those things. We want to be confident in what we know while also knowing we don't have all the answers. And that's where the questions come in, and the curiosity and the excitement for the role. So I've learned these things in class. I can do these things pretty decently. Of course, I'm learning. Everyone always is. What are the things that I need to be learning? What are the things I need to add to my list to be ready to go on day one? And if you can be confident in filling in those gaps, they're going to be confident in hiring you because they know that you'll be the person who will go above and beyond and keep learning things in the role, right? Because at the end of the day, they really just want to be able to trust you. So when we're talking about our pitch and we're talking about showing up in interviews or networking or whatever it is that we're doing, it's more important to build rapport and trust than to get everything right, okay? Is everything I'm telling you 100% accurate all of the time? That would be impossible. There's no way to know every single human interaction that's going to happen in every single job search, right? Some people are more introverted, some people are more extroverted, but it's a baseline understanding that you can then build off of for your own needs, right? And the same with the way that you interview. When you go in, are you going to be able to answer every single possible question that they have about this, about their internal needs? No, because you don't know the internal needs of the company. You don't have every answer for everything that they could possibly need help with. But if you can build trust, if you can ask questions, and if you can bounce back when you don't know things, you're going to be standing out from the crowd. And a big thing here is like, let's say they ask you about a certain technology and you don't know it, right? Is there any technology that's on your mind right now that you're like, I hope they don't ask me about that one?
Base languages, C+.
Okay, so let's say they ask you about C+, all right? How much experience do you have with C+? How would you answer it right now, Nick? 0 years experience. What do you know about C+?
Well, when they say base language, it means that it deals with bottom level, like it goes even a layer beneath Python. It's like the nuts and bolts that make up what Python and the other languages on top of it are.
There you go. So while I may not have experience with the baseline knowledge of C++, I do understand Python. I understand the things that are built on it, and I can get up and running on that pretty quickly. What percentage of this role is necessary to know, or what percentage of this role is spent knowing the base languages? And do you have any recommendations on things that I should start learning now to be ready to go on day one? So if you put it back into context and you talk about what you do know and talk about how you'll learn it, it's much better than saying, I don't have any experience with C++, right? So that's a big piece. A big piece of your pitch is how you show up with it, how you deliver it, how you ask questions when there's gaps and things like that. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel like you might be able to pull that card in an interview, or do you feel like you might need to adjust it a bit?
I mean, I think that perseverance covers like a lot of gaps that in your understanding. So if people can, again, see that you're willing to work hard, but yeah, I think that I could word it in a way that would make it convincing.
Yeah, and bringing in the other things that you've learned as well, right? Because you've learned a ton of stuff in this course, right? That's going to be helpful in the job search. Another one that happens with the getting things quote unquote right is sometimes people will ramble or go on tangents and things in interviews, and then they get frozen. I don't know if anyone here is a rambler. I definitely am. One of the good things you can do if that starts to happen is to pause. You've realized you've gone on a tangent, gotten away from the question. So pause and say, sorry, I get really excited about these topics. Let me restate the question and answer it really quickly. And that can help reset versus kind of creating an anxiety tunnel for folks. So again, whenever you start to find yourself going off the rails in an interview, there's always a way to bounce back. So prep for the unexpected. Don't try to avoid the unexpected. I think so often we spend too much time trying to make sure things don't go wrong that we're not ready when they do. So instead, allow things to go wrong, quote unquote, don't purposely make things go wrong. I do that, but I'm a career coach, so I'm always trying to do crazy things like bomb interviews to see how bad they can go. But be ready when things go wrong. Know how you'll bounce back from something happening rather than trying to hope that they don't ask you that question that will catch you off guard, right? And that's really the long and short of it, right? We need to put them first as we're thinking about this role. Why are they hiring this? What are my skills and how do they solve their problems? And what is the ROI that I bring to the business? Again, you don't need to know the number, but you should at least know the impact you're having. Now, when it comes to your unique story, who here is trying to like get away from a career? Anyone just trying like, I don't want to be doing what I was doing before? And that's why I'm in, okay. What can you give me some examples of what you're getting away from? Feel free to unmute.
Terrible pay, lack of opportunities.
What was the industry?
Higher ed.
Higher ed. Okay. Now, in an interview, if they were to ask you about your past, how would you describe your time in higher ed? Would it just be terrible pay, lack of opportunities?
I would probably talk about how inspiring it's been to work with high achieving young people.
You're so exhausted just saying.
Do groundbreaking research. I don't know.
Well, that's
It's hard not to be negative.
I'm going to stand up real quick. It's been a long day. Just a second. I definitely hear you on it's hard not to be negative, right? That's why we make big career pivots. That's why we do these things, right? When I left marketing to go into education and career coaching, I was pretty salty on marketing. And every once in a while, I'm still salty on marketing. But generally speaking, I understand the value of marketing and I can talk pretty positively to the things that I got from it, right? And for you, we want to focus less on the job itself and more about what you learned about yourself doing that job, right? So in my case, I learned when I was in marketing that I'm really curious what makes people do the things that they do. Human behavior, psychology, all that different stuff, right? Why do we buy things? Why do we consume certain products? Why do we not consume certain ideas, right? Why do people watch so much whatever, right? And that same curiosity drives my work here, right? Why do companies not hire certain people? Why is the story that we're telling not working? Things like that, right? Same skill set, different application. So for you, my question is, what is the thing that you learned about yourself going through higher ed that led you to make this change into your new focus? What do you think?
I love that question. I can't answer it now. I'm gonna reflect on it.
Fair enough. Well, just think about it. I'll put it more practically. Was there a certain thing that you were doing in higher ed, a skill that you noticed that you were really good at that you wanted to make more of your full-time role, or was it purely just you wanted to get into a different situation?
Well, it'll sound like one of those cliche general answers, but I got into higher ed because I love teaching and working with people, talking about ideas. But what I discovered is that that's a tiny sliver of the actual industry. And so maybe I could talk about how I see more of a fit in tech.
So being a software developer, you get to do all that same stuff, but you actually get to then go build the thing, right? So in higher ed, you got to be theoretical and educate people on things. Whereas in software development, you get to have all those big idea conversations and actually go build the solution and apply it to a real business need.
That's cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So now you're tying the two things together, right? I got into marketing because I was obsessed with human behavior. I'm a coach because I'm obsessed with human behavior. That keeps it the same. And that way you can explain these transitions, right? It's less about the transition itself and more about what you learned about yourself in the transition. And this is something in the examples that we tell later on with your stories. It's more important what you learned from a story than the story itself, right? So tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker. The conflict matters way less than what you learned about conflict from that conflict that you're going to take into your next role, right? Your actual strength and weakness, when they say, what are your strengths and weaknesses? The actual examples you give matter less than what you've learned about yourself from those strengths and weaknesses and how you've changed your career to adapt, right? So there's a lot of different things that we can dig into here. But what I want to push you to do is uncover your 4 to 6 best professional stories, focus on the learnings from those stories, and speak more to what you can do in the future rather than to what you quote unquote have experience with in the past, right? Someone could have 5 years of experience as a software developer, but they're an a-hole and they are horrible to work with, right? So who's the better hire? Less experience, but you're going to work better with the team, or more experience and arrogant, right? We know what the truth is there. So if you can speak more confidently to your capabilities rather than your hands-on work, you're going to really stand out. Now, here's some things that you should not say. Don't be general. I like to solve problems and I want to make a difference. If I told you I'm a career coach because I love impacting people, okay. And then you'd say, great, can you look at my resume? You know, right? It's like, I want to have a big impact in someone's life. Okay, but I also need to just get down and do the work of writing your resume and communicating your skills better, right? So you really want to talk more concretely, because if you say these things, they're going to hear this. I don't understand the value of my work, and I'm not sure why you want to hire me. Does anyone feel a little bit unhireable right now? I'm seeing some eyes raised. You're hireable because companies have an unlimited number of problems. Every time a company solves a problem, what happens? There's another problem, right? There is never an end to the number of companies and the number of problems. The only question is, does this company have a budget for you to solve this problem right now? And that's what we're trying to figure out. So again, we got to show that value. Now, all you really need for an interview is 4 to 6 stories. 4 to 6 good stories from your past that you can reference to answer hundreds of interview questions. All right. Now that might seem crazy, but let me break it down a little bit. Almost all interview questions come at you off of a sheet of paper that was downloaded from Google, right? So if you're ever wondering, what am I going to be asked in this interview? The answer is go on to Google, type in questions I should ask in an interview, which is literally what the hiring manager is about to do right before they see you 10 minutes before, right? Questions I should ask in this interview. And you have the answer key. It's like flipping to the back of the book in the textbook, right? You already know what questions are coming your way because there's 10 million articles written about it. Now the question is, what stories are you going to tell? I want you to know the stories you're going to tell before the questions get asked. Now, this is something a little bit later on that I'm jumping ahead to, but I want you to answer questions like a politician. All right. No politician gets on stage and says, boy, I sure hope they ask me the question so I can talk about Joe the farmer, right? No, they hear whatever the question is, they ignore the question, and they tell the Joe the farmer story, okay? I'm not telling you to actually be a politician because that's infuriating, but what I am saying is take a lesson from them, right? Go in with the 5 stories that you definitely want to tell, and then when they say, tell me about a time that you had a conflict with a coworker, you go, all right, I'm going to tell this story from a conflict angle. Tell me about a time that you showed leadership in a role. Okay, I'm going to tell that project story, but from a leadership perspective, right? So one story can probably answer 5 or 6 questions because you can just tell the different part of it, right? Tell me about a time that you showed leadership. Okay, my name is Martin. I'm a career coach. I was a contractor once, and the boss went on maternity leave, brought me on to run a program for 6 months, and we hit our deadlines. And I really stepped up and showed leadership there. Tell me about a time that you had a conflict with a coworker. Well, on that project that I was doing the management on, I had a person that was reporting to me who was also the person that trained me when I was a contractor, and we had a lot of conflict, right? So I can tell the same story, but a different subsect of the story, right? So you just think about a movie, right? Each character in the movie could have their own movie, right? Cruella just came out, right? She was just a bit character, right? So there's always more to each of these stories than just one answer. So feel free to dig in and parse apart your answers. And here's just a few things, a few directional things that you can start thinking about. What was a project that you struggled on? What was a project that you succeeded on? What is a time you had a conflict? What is a time that you showed leadership? That's a good starting point to brainstorm the stories that you're going to tell. And don't feel like you have to tell the most charged stories either. So a lot of times when someone says, tell me about a time that you had a conflict at work, people will talk about their worst conflict at work. That wasn't the question. The question is, tell me about a conflict at work. Tell one that you actually will be able to share the story without getting angry, because that'll happen too. You'll start going like, darn Brenda, and then the whole interview's off the rails, right? Don't do that. So tell like, oh, I really wanted to do a wireframe, but we didn't have time, so we skipped the wireframe, and it created this issue later on. And what I learned is that we should always be wireframing, right? But be specific with it. And that's the key here, right? We need to be really specific with our stories. So often, I actually was doing a mock interview this morning with someone, and she goes, well, I worked on a team and I'm very optimistic, and that optimism is what, keeps projects going. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what projects? What are we doing? How am I supposed to know? Like, you want me to put optimism on my team? Where do I put you on the team? Do I assign you these tasks or these tasks? I don't know, because all you've told me is that you're an optimist, right? What I need to know is, are you the researcher? Or are you the data person? Or are you the public speaker? Or are you the, survey builder? Or are you the designer, right? Which person are you on the team? You need to be specific, right? Like, there's plenty of career coaching roles that are heavily data focused. I should not be hired for those roles. I should be hired for the ones where people are crying and going through really emotional issues, and they want to reach out to me and vent for an hour. That's what I'm really good at. And I have hundreds of stories to back it up. I just want to pause real quick. Are there any questions on this breakdown as we're going through it? Anything about the interview that you're just like really curious about?
Martin, just a quick question for you. I know that we said earlier, don't be so like high level of be like, I like to solve problems, and like that's kind of it. But like, for example, one of my passions is autonomous cars, and there's obviously a lot of software that goes into that. And my dream job is to someday work for a company like Tesla designing software. And I have like a personal story about like why I would like to, and like why I'd like to solve their problem. It's more appropriate to like direct, like you said, like what they need. So if it's their problem, like you can tell them why you want to solve their problems, right? Is that more?
I want you to talk about solving problems, but I want you to talk about solving specific problems.
Okay.
Right? Cool. So that's 100%, right? So let's say you want to work at Tesla. I want to work at Tesla because I want to be part of an organization that is trying to speed up the adoption of electric cars in the world. That's why I want to work at Tesla. All right. Let's say you can't get into Tesla. They're not hiring right now for whatever reason. Elon's getting, targeted by Anonymous, and they put a freeze on hiring. I don't know. But that doesn't mean there's not 100 or 1,000 other electric car and electric scooter and electric other companies that would be really cool places to work that you could use as starting points for your lily pad into Tesla, right?
Okay.
And so the idea here is I want to solve electric vehicle problems and electric vehicle software problems, because I think that the transition from, old types of transportation to new types of transportation is really fascinating. And there's an endless number of things to solve. I'd love to work at Tesla. That's my number one. But anything in its orbit is also really cool. And now you can go in with the same passion and vigor to all of those companies. And that's what I like to call being interested in a field of study over a single company. And
Awesome.
that tends to keep people more energized, right? Typically we get into the job boards and we start getting really demoralized and we're like, I don't even care about this company. I'm just applying. I'm actually okay with that mindset of not caring about the company. But what I would encourage you to do is care about the field or the industry, because that will keep you from putting things on a pedestal. Because typically if we put it on a pedestal, we over prepare and then we kind of shake ourselves up too much. And it keeps us energized for the ones that we're less excited about, because at least we can be excited about the field. I was actually interviewing for a company once and they go, why do you want to work here? And I honestly, full disclosure, I interview so much, I forgot what company I was talking to. So I was like, well, I think that, education is just so, and I just went on a little thing about education. I couldn't remember who I was talking to that day. Like, I'm a career coach. So this is my job to just constantly be out there doing this stuff. But you can be passionate about a field and that will keep you much more motivated. So let's say it's, I really love health and wellness, or I really love education, or I really love finance, whatever the thing is. Now you can go talk to thousands of companies all with the same amount of passion. Where it gets weird is when today you're talking to a fashion company, tomorrow you're talking to a food company, the next day you're talking to a razor blade company. I don't know, like, okay, now I'm doing Schick razors. Like, what am I doing? Who am I talking to? Why do I want to work here? I don't have an answer. I just want a paycheck. That's when people start getting really caught up and their story falls apart. I hope I answered your question. Very long tangent.
You did. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And, reference your stuff here, right? You've got your coursework, you've got your projects, you've got your extracurriculars. Talk about what you did in class, right? And organize your stories. Okay, this is where we're getting into the real nitty gritty here, okay? And this is something that's difficult to do. It's something I'm constantly practicing as well. Has anyone here heard of the STAR method? Okay, all right, new things for you all. All right, the STAR method is situation, problem, action, result. And I actually came up with an even worse acronym called SPARL, which is situation, problem, action, result, and learning, okay? So the classic STAR method, when you tell a story, is to say, here's the situation. I was working at this company on this project with these people. You've set the scene, okay? Then you were given a task or a problem, right? The task was we needed to launch a new website, or the problem was I had a conflict with this person about this detail of the project, all right? The action I took to resolve the problem or to complete the task was blank. And the result I got was that we launched on time, or we got X number of customers, or we converted, a new client, or whatever the thing might be. And I add in learning because that's the most important thing. What I learned from this project, what I learned from this conflict, what I learned from this experience was I need to be doing wireframes in every project. I need to be bringing in a third party to help resolve conflicts. I learned that I need to always voice my opinion, even if my idea isn't chosen, and then still contribute to the team as strongly as I was before. But the team needs to know about all the opinions, right? So using this STAR method is going to be really helpful in organizing the stories that you tell in an interview. So every question that you get asked in an interview should have a story attached to it. All right. Tell me about your strengths and weaknesses. I procrastinate. Dead silence. Cool. Next question, right? Not the way to go. What we want to say is, my strength is blank. Here's an example of me showing that strength in a role. My weakness is blank. Here's an example of a time when I was given this task and it didn't go so well. and why other people should be doing those tasks and not me. Because really what they're trying to learn is, where should we put you on the team? Should I give you the data tasks? Should I give you the, and we went through this already. So just to give it a little bit of an oomph here, right? So situation, I was working at a boot camp, and I was coaching their students. All right, that's the situation. One of the students was a mother in her 50s who was going through a divorce. All right, that's the situation. The problem, she was emotionally overwhelmed trying to do the job search, raise her kid, and deal with a divorce all at the same time. The action I took was to give her options for coaching that could be flexible around her needs and also allow her to just sort of vent on the call. The result was she was able to calm down, pick the option that worked best for her, and we were able to coach her into a job. What I learned from that experience is that everyone is coming in with a different issue, a different personal issue that you don't normally see that is impacting their job search. And my job as a coach is to uncover that and help people manage the entire scope of their life to some degree, rather than just the job search. Because if I just kept peppering her with, why haven't you applied? Why haven't you applied? I probably wouldn't be helping, right? And that's what I'm going to bring into this company when I work with your clients, X, Y, and Z, right? So that is a just sort of general, how would that play out as I tell the story? So think about it for yourself. Think about one project that you worked on. Where were you working? What was the project? Who were you working with? It's okay to give names. It's okay to give, like, I was in Florida working on this team with these people, and Jim and I always had conflict. The things that we always had conflict over were blank, and you give an actual example of a conflict. Now, instead of talking generally about conflicts overall, right? Like, because that's how people answer it. They go, well, one time I was on a team and we had conflicts, but we talked it out and now everything is good. That tells me nothing. One time I was on a team and Brenda wanted the website to have green buttons and I wanted the website to have blue buttons. And I brought my research in to show why blue buttons were better than green buttons. And we presented it to the higher ups and they chose green buttons. So I lost that one, but at least I made my voice known and gave them the research that they needed, right? I'm making this up. Maybe green buttons are better than blue buttons. I don't know. But you get my point, right? Be specific so that they can picture you doing your job. And again, I'm just reiterating, what you learned is the most important piece. The conflict is secondary to what you learned about conflict that you're going to take into the next role. The leadership position is secondary to what you learned about leadership that you're going to take into the next role. The time that you failed on a project is less important than what you learned about how you fail and bounce back, which is what you'll take into your next role. Okay. And again, the politician slide, Miss Rob Williams. All right. And again, speak to what you can do. You're not going to have an answer for every question. The worst thing in an interview is dead silence, right? Even just that amount of silence probably made some of you uncomfortable, right? So we don't want to just be like, this happens a lot with what's your salary? Like, what do you expect salary wise? And you go, my last job paid me $60K. Okay, next question. Wait, no, is that part of your budget? Wait, right? So you always want to put it back to them. You always want to be having conversation and building rapport. So if they ask you, what's your pay requirements? You say, based on my research, it's between this amount and that amount. How does that fit within your budget? Now the question's back in their court and they have to say something, right? So that's why asking questions and building rapport can be helpful. All right. So share your stories in your job search. What are your top 4 to 6 struggle and success stories? Okay. This is your homework in a way. What did you learn from each of these experiences and how will these learnings inform your future work? All right, I'm going to pause there. Any questions on storytelling and how to utilize it in the interview and in this pitching process. Does everyone have at least one story in mind of that you know that you want to tell in an interview? A project.
Do you think
worked-
it's
Go
like
ahead.
is it okay for us to make up a story about a specific like struggle or success?
What do you mean make up?
Like if it's a struggle with, like, you know, you say you're fighting with a coworker about a project or something, but that never really happened to me. So
Typically, no. No, it's not good to make up stories. Usually it's not good to make up stories for your own benefit too, because you'll end up like, it's hard for people to keep straight fake stories. So if you're just making things up, you might end up like tripping over your own words, and they might ask a follow-up that you won't know how to answer, right? Or something along those lines. So no, I typically say don't do that. What I would say is try and find some conflicts that maybe don't seem so big and find a way to tell those stories, right? Like I can tell, like I said before, you don't always want to, they're not asking what is your worst conflict. They're asking what's a time that you've ever had a conflict, right?
so it doesn't have to be related to like programming or engineering or.
No, not necessarily. It can just be interpersonal, right? You know, I used to work at Target and I had conflicts with people, right? So like
Gotcha.
it should be a real conflict though, because then you'll actually have the detail to fill it out and have the learnings to fill it out, right? So you know, back when I worked in marketing, I had a conflict with my manager. This maybe isn't what I would say in an interview, but I had a conflict with my manager about how the data was being analyzed. And I thought it should be done this way. They thought it should be done this way. At the end of the day, it's up to my manager, the way that the work needs to get done. But I wanted to at least make the case, right? And so you can tell that story. But there's so many different things that you can, I'm being very vague right now, which is going against my own slides, but you get what I'm saying. So definitely try and find a real one. If you're really struggling with it, like some people say, well, I'm averse to conflict, right? I'm generally non-confrontational. And if that's the case, there's a story to be told there, right? You could say I'm generally non-confrontational, and sometimes that gets me into trouble. This one time I was on a team and I should have, you know, pushed against what we were doing. And because I didn't say anything, we didn't do the proper legwork to do things right, and the project got off course or got delayed or something like that. And then you can tell that story about when you should have had a conflict. And what you learned from that is you actually need to voice your opinion more, right? So
Gotcha.
you can kind of reverse it in a way.
Thank you.
Martin.
Yeah.
Just really quick, I'm wondering, in coming up with these stories, how important is it, if at all, to avoid casting former employers in a negative light?
Yeah, it's important to keep the tone positive. And this is why I'm encouraging you not to tell your worst conflict stories. Like there was, after I lost a job, I was at a company, they laid off the careers team, and I started interviewing. And in the interviews, they would say, what's a conflict that you've had? And I started telling them a story about a conflict that I was just in like a month ago. Like it just happened. And I noticed my whole tone of the interview went from like, I'm excited and I'm curious and I can't wait to work here, to I don't like that person. And like, that was horrible, because then all of a sudden they're like, wow, the tone really changed in here. And now you're all flustered or blushing or whatever, and you can't get back to like your happy-go-lucky place, right? So I think it's really important to, again, the conflict is less important than the learning. So focus on the learning over the conflict. and tell the story enough times that it becomes benign, almost to the point where you're talking about someone else, right? Like it could have happened to anyone. Like I'm so detached from the conflict at this point in time. So don't ever throw anyone under the bus, because that's a bad look and it'll make it look like you throw people under the bus in your next job. But do talk about like, I disagreed with their opinion because of these reasons, right? Talk about it a little bit more scientifically if you can. So I'll actually share a real one. So I was working on a team at this one large education company, and I was on a job guarantee coaching product. And in that job guarantee product, we were trying to maintain a certain level of job placement percentage outcomes. One of the ways in which we were hitting that outcome number was by holding people to a list of requirements really strictly. So if people didn't apply to 10 plus jobs every week, they were not qualified anymore for the job refund, for the job search refund. I disagreed with that because it's hard for me as a coach to go from I'm your best friend here to support you, whatever you need, to you didn't apply to enough jobs, I'm taking away your refund, right? I can't be the bad guy and the best friend at the same time. And that was a real issue. So I had to have a lot of conversations with my VP about it to figure out how to best enforce those policies while still maintaining, my approach to coaching. They disagreed with me on what I wanted to do, but we found a medium where I could be slightly lenient while still maintaining our metrics and still maintaining, what we needed to do. So again, I could talk about that for 20 minutes, but I'm giving you just like, I didn't throw my VP under the bus with that story. I just talked about how we disagreed a bit, and here's the solution we came to and what I learned from it. And what I learned from it is I don't like job search guarantees, and I hope your company doesn't do them because I find that they are very unhelpful, all said and done for people, both on the business side and the user side. Did that answer your question? I know I ramble and tell a lot of stories.
No, it's awesome. Thanks.
Cool. How long should these stories be? Less than a minute? You can kind of feel it out in the interview. I don't think there's like a specific time amount, but generally speaking, if you follow the story arc of, situation, task, action, result, it keeps it pretty concise. It's when you start going on tangents that it gets really bad in an interview. Some people talk more, some people talk less. I won't give a number, but I'll just say, be concise. One of my favorite quotes is, I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. And it's hard to be succinct. So the more succinct you can try to be, you'll probably never get it to like one sentence, but you can do a pretty good job keeping it short. Speaking of getting things to one sentence, we're going to be writing your pitch pretty soon. So get ready. All right. The reason we went through this whole process here, we talked about putting yourselves in their shoes. We talked about your stories. We talked about how to connect your stories to what they care about, is because your pitch is a very simplified version of all of this stuff, right? You have to write your pitch with their perspective in mind. You have to tell it that in a way that incorporates your past and incorporates your story. So that's what we're going to be doing here, is simplifying your personal narrative. Again, things not to say. Why did you leave your last job? I didn't like the work, so I quit and I changed jobs to make more money. People are not going to be happy to hear that, right? Just like if you're out there dating, you don't say, I want to get married in the first text, right? So how about we hold off on the pay until the negotiation, right? For those of us that are entering into Coding Temple with little to no coding experience, our stories in the industry, is it bad that all your stories come from only Coding Temple and jobs and other fields? It's not bad. It's not bad as long as you own the stories and tell them appropriately. If you're connecting what you learned to what you're trying to do in the future, you're golden, right? When I got into career coaching, all my experience was marketing and advertising. So what did I have to do? I had to talk about how my marketing and advertising work prepared me to work with people one-on-one in a coaching setting. I've done user interviews. That has prepared me to do one-on-one coaching, right? I've put together presentations that has prepared me to create workshops, right? I have done, in my marketing work, I've done competitive analyses, and that has helped me think strategically about the different ways in which, clients need support, right? So you can always make these connections in some way, shape, or form. Not everything will translate, but there are tons of transferable skills. I'd also recommend Googling transferable skills from customer service into coding, right? Or whatever it might be, right? I was working with a teacher recently who became a UX designer, and we looked up transferable skills from being a teacher that work in UX. And there's all these websites dedicated to this. And basically it was like designing curriculum is very similar to designing websites. And they were able to tell their curriculum design stories as an example for their UX work. I hope that gives enough context there. All right. We don't want them to feel like we just quit when things get tough and we don't like it. So we need to tell a story that is positive. All right. It doesn't mean you need to be relentlessly positive. I actually don't like all the positivity porn on the internet. I think it's quite annoying. But if you are a negative Nelly in an interview, they're going to assume you're going to be a brutal person to work with. So try to at least keep it neutral, if not positive. And don't ignore your past. Use it as a differentiator. So I'd love for each of you to write down, what was your career before coming to the boot camp? What did you do? Put it in the chat. All right, we have a business analyst, nursing. Nursing probably has a ton of great stories, right? Tons of conflicts, tons of high stress situations, tons of, working under pressure and making big decisions. Delivery driver, awesome. All right, manager at Starbucks, so dealing with people, very cool. What we want to do is pull in the past, present, and future, okay? So literally when you're answering the question, tell me about yourself, everyone goes off the rails. We like have no idea how to answer that question, even though it's asked in every interview and we all know it's coming, right? It still throws us through a loop, right? The reason we struggle with it is because it's not a question, it's just a statement, and we don't know what the person wants. I'm going to let you in on a secret. They don't know what they want, all right? The person interviewing you was likely not trained in how to interview properly, okay? So they're just making stuff up as they go. So what you need to do is say, what are they really asking me? Every time you get asked a question, what are they really asking me? And hidden secret, when they say, tell me about yourself, they go, hey, thanks for coming in. Great to chat with you. Tell me about yourself. What they're really saying is, I have no idea how to start this conversation. So I downloaded this list off the internet and it told me to ask you this question. Can you start the conversation? And then we go, well, do you want to know about my current work, my past work? And they go, I don't know. I'm just reading off this list, right? So don't worry so much. Like, don't worry about them so much. Think more about the way you want to set the tone for this conversation. What they're saying is, you kick us off. And then you get to say, how do I want to kick us off? And typically, going back through the presentation here, you want to kick off the conversation by focusing on the value you provide the company in context with your history. So I like to say, my previous work, or I started my career, or what I was working on before was, right? So I used to work, or here's how I would phrase it. I started my career off in marketing and advertising, where I really fell in love with behavioral science and what makes people do the things that they do. What I learned about myself in that process is that I really enjoy interacting with individuals and utilizing different marketing communication strategies to help improve their careers, which led me into the education space where I now work as a career coach. All right. So that transition is seamless, right? So you take your past, you talk about what you learned about yourself, and you tie it to the current thing that you're trying to do. And that's doubling down on the present. All right. Now, when you talk about the present, I need you to talk about it as though you already are the thing. Okay. Now, all of you are trying to break into your industry or start a new career or pivot or whatever. But everyone who has the job that you're trying to get at one point went through the learning process and the application process. So that is part of the job. Learning how to do the job and finding that first job is part of being in that job. So you're already a UX person, you're already a web developer, you're already a data analyst. You're just a data analyst looking for a company to do this work at full time, right? As soon as I hang up this call, I'm not quote unquote being paid anymore today, right? Because I get paid by the hour. Does that mean I'm suddenly not a career coach because I'm not getting paid for this hour? No, right? If a marketing director gets laid off, do they cease to be a marketer? No, they just cease to be a marketer at that company. Okay. So I need you to double down on the fact that this is what I do. I do web development. I do data analysis. I do UX. I do whatever it is that you do. And here's how I help companies. Now I'm looking for a company to apply these skills to. All right. And that's the future. You want to tie what you're doing now to their business needs. All right. So bringing it all together. I started my career doing this. I learned these things about myself, which opened up this other direction that I wanted to take things into this area. What I enjoy most about doing this work is blank things. And that's why I'm so excited about this role, so I can see where I can bring value to your team and solve these kinds of problems. Again, I'm trying to keep it as open-ended here as possible, but for each of you, right, what would it be? So we've got, I started my career off as a nurse, right? And then what was I'm going back through our notes here. And now you want to be a project manager, right? Am I looking at that right? So nurse to project manager. What did you learn about yourself in your nursing role that surprised you, that also made you want to make a move into project management?
Oh my gosh. Well, currently where I work at, there's no real like charge nurse. So it's more or less just a bunch of nurses who are kind of scattered. And I find myself constantly in that role of trying to corral everybody and assign the people whose strengths suit them to the appropriate patient or to the appropriate,
That is awesome. So I started my career off as a nurse, where I was working on a team that didn't have like a lead nurse that was corralling everyone. So I found that I naturally stepped up into that role, and I've been corralling everyone and getting everything working. And it kind of dawned on me that I should probably be a project manager, because that's a big piece of the role. So I've gone back to a boot camp to study project management. And I'm really excited to be able to work with a company like yours to make sure that all the stakeholders are being involved in the planning and implementation of new projects to keep things efficient and on time and keep projects running smoothly. I'm curious what sort of projects you're trying to implement right now and why you're hiring for this role. Super excited to learn more. Ties the whole thing together.
That was perfect.
Hey, and this one's recorded, so come back and listen to it once it's up on YouTube. So this is how you can do it, right? For me, it's marketing into coaching, into helping them with their students. For you, it's nursing into project management, into helping their projects. For each of you, you have your own story, your own story arc. And that's the past, present, future of how you can answer, tell me about yourself in an interview. How did I get here and why does it matter? But let's make it even simpler. Here's the simple pitch I'm going to leave you with today. Merging a background in blank and blank, I help companies do blank. So merging a background in nursing and project management, I help companies corral all stakeholders and get their projects done on time. That's how I would phrase it, but everyone has their own way of doing it. All right. So, oh, Naomi left she's back. All right. So merging a background in this and that, I help companies do this. All right. So here's an example. Merging a background in customer service and web development, I help companies create amazing experiences for their users online. All right. Merging a background in nursing and project management, I help companies keep their projects on task by corralling all stakeholders and keeping things well organized for your internal projects. What would be your pitch? Let's take a minute and do it right now. Put it in the chat when you have it ready. If you're struggling, just let me know.
Yeah, Martin, I think just what I'm struggling with is like there's so many different titles of different jobs, and like figuring out specifically, like you're saying, with transferable skills, which one is going to mesh well with, like, say, like my background's in education, so I would be merging that background with, I put sales engineer, but I've also been interested in project management. So
just choose the most general, and you can always change this pitch. So this pitch is adaptable, right? So sometimes I'll say merging a background in marketing with career development, I help organizations improve student outcomes. That's when I'm talking to a boot camp. But if I'm not talking to a boot camp, I might say merging a background in marketing with career development, I help stressed out professionals navigate the emotional and promotional sides of the job search. There's a million ways I could rephrase it, and I probably change it too often, but you can just put in the placeholder of what you think you want. And then as you start networking, you'll find out pretty quickly which things you actually want, and then just adapt it to that. And you don't need the accomplish these goals to be including what you did as like a nurse or anything. The accomplish these goals is just what this current role. So the background is just to differentiate you. So if I just said, I'm a career coach that helps people with their resumes, you're like, cool. I'm a marketing career coach. I'm a marketer and career coach who helps people with their resumes. You go, oh, I could see how you probably help people from a marketing standpoint as well as a coaching standpoint. It gives more flavor to it. Merging a background in customer service and software development, I help companies create streamlined user experiences for their customers. Nice. With a background in customer service and passion for curiosity, I help companies create streamlined user experiences for the customers. Was everyone in customer service, or are we just taking the example that was on the example there? Merging a background in education and software development, I help companies create educational programs that teachers will want to use in the classroom. That is perfect. Love that one. Merging a background in college teaching and research and software development, I help companies communicate powerful narratives and offer rich experiences that attract new customers and keep existing customers coming back. See how you're hitting on that business goal? Keep customers coming back. That's what companies want to hear, right? What company Wouldn't want to hear. Keep customers coming back, right? Merging a background in network admin and full stack development, I help companies optimize software products to improve enterprise performance. All of you are hitting this out of the park. This is exactly what I wanted to see. Awesome. All right. Now, places you can put this. You can put this in your resume summary. You can use this as the baseline for the tell me about yourself question, but fill it out with the past, present, future. You could even go, merging a background in network admin and full stack development. I help companies optimize software products and improve enterprise performance. What I did in my network admin role was blank, and that led me into being a full stack developer. And now I'm super excited. So you can kind of merge them together if you want. But all of you are really hitting this out of the park. And again, just to reiterate, talk about how you got here, what you do, and how it helps. All right, I know we're right at time, so if you have to jump, feel free, but I will open it up for general questions about anything we talked about today or anything job search related at this time. What's on your mind?
Are you on Slack, by the way, or is there a way to reach you?
I'm not on Slack, but you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can chat there back and forth. And I also have, like a podcast and other stuff that you can definitely find through Career Therapy if you look it up. But always happy to answer any questions you have via Slack, or sorry, via LinkedIn.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Well, I hope this was helpful today. I hope we could simplify a few things in regards to your narrative and get you thinking, I don't know, maybe a little bit. I want to try and take some of this stuff off the pedestal, right? When it comes to the job search, it's so like, I need that thing that's way up there. Just remember, as soon as you get a job, you're going to trade job search problems for my manager's a jerk problems or some other stuff. So there is no perfect dream job. Everything is just a trade-off, right? So this process is tough, and I want you to, take the most realistic approach to it. You probably won't love the job search, but try not to hate it. Just try to be neutral about it and realize that these are the steps that you need to get into a place where you get to actually use the skills you're good at. And that's going to be fun at the end of the day. And if you can apply your project management skills to the job search, by all means, use all the resources you have at your disposal. My marketing background definitely helped with the job search when I was doing it. So good luck. Reach out if you have any questions, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Martin.
Thanks. Thank
Cheers.
you, Martin. Appreciate it.
Thank you.